Hello, wrestling fans.
Are you ready?
Ooh, yeah.
Let me tell you something, brother. British Wrestling's very own Steve Saxon presents the iSax Wrestling Podcast. It's just one more platform for him to get his shit in.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, I am here with a follow-up episode from the 5-Star Wrestling interview that was released earlier on this week. With me today, I have got three British wrestling personalities. We've got Kieran Moran, who's a British wrestling ring announcer. We've got Rhys Wynn, the owner and founder of the longest-running wrestling betting website. And we've got Max Davis, a British wrestling referee. How are we doing, guys?
Good.
Good, yeah. Good to be here.
Yeah, all good. Thanks a lot, first of all, for taking the time to come on the iSax Wrestling Podcast to give your feedback. I take it that you've all listened to the Daniel Hinkle's interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So let's get straight into it then, guys. Got a few questions I'm going to throw at you, and I'd really appreciate your honest feedback. So first of all, what was your knowledge and thoughts of 5-Star Wrestling before you listened to the iSax interview of Daniel Hinkle's the other day?
To be honest, from my perspective, my knowledge of 5-Star, I didn't actually see they did a pilot on Spike, I believe. I was aware of that. I was aware of I'm going to use a technical term, a Reddit AMA. You know what one of those are?
No idea.
Okay, so Reddit AMA is the website Reddit, which is like a social media forum for loads of sites and loads of interests. Absolutely everything happens on Reddit, and there is a very popular wrestling Reddit called R Squared Circle, and that's a letter R followed by Squared Circle if you want to Google it. I'm aware that I think either Daniel himself or a representative of 5-Star did a AMA on it, and I do believe like the most popular question on that was, how the bloody hell can you afford it? This was before all this shit went down. Right. So that was my understanding of 5-Star before that. I cannot say that I was completely and utterly. I was aware that they existed. I was aware of their reputation, shall we say. But apart from that, I hadn't seen any of the products, so I couldn't comment on that.
Okay.
I watched the pilot episodes. That was I watched it under Dominant Wrestling when I scanned through, and so I was like, oh, I'll record that, give it a watch later. And I mean, apart from the fact that he mentioned that there was naming issues with it, like be that through the network or whatever, but that's still something was still a bit. All right, that's interesting that they've not used the 5-Star name. Don't know what's going on there. But I was quite excited because I knew that there was British wrestling talent at that show, but they weren't shown on the TV. There was only Magnus was the only British, I think, was the only British wrestler on that show, and it was just I felt really let down, to be honest. Like, you're supposed to be showcasing that's what this entire at the moment, that is what the British wrestling industry is striving towards, is being put on TV, getting British talent on TV, and here we have, one guy who's, this might be just my view, but I don't even view Magnus as a big part of the British wrestling scene, because he made his name for himself in TNA, so that was a big of a letdown. So that's my only real knowledge of 5-Star, and then obviously everything broken. Everyone kind of knows who they are now.
I'd heard of the promotion and I knew they were running, but I had no idea. I'd never seen any of their footage. I didn't even know who the promoter was then. I didn't even know who he was until I listened to the podcast, if I'm perfectly honest. So yeah, really no knowledge about him at all.
Right, that's quite interesting. I didn't really know a lot about 5-Star. I didn't know anything at all about Daniel Hinkle. So as I said in the interview, that I had to Google him, and there was pretty much zero on Google about Daniel Hinkle, and not much more on there about 5-Star Wrestling. I'm guessing after the news has broke this week, and of course because of the iSax podcast, if you Google him now, there'll probably be a bit more about him. But I was aware that the reason that he started doing his shows, his live shows, was initially to promote his video game, the 5-Star Wrestling video game. Now, I'm not a not a big gamer. My kids have a PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and you know, they have some of the WWE wrestling games. I asked my kids if they've ever heard of this game, because they're really savvy with stuff like that, and even they hadn't heard of 5-star wrestling. I have been told by other people that the game itself isn't that bad, but apparently, yes, the reason of the live tour was to promote this video game and try and get some more revenue in that way. Rudy, I mean, I don't know so much about Kieran and Max and if they're big gamers, but I know for a fact that, you know, Reese is. Sorry, if I for the people who are not in the know out there, Reese to me is Rudy. That's his nickname, so you'll have to float between the two. Rudy, what was your thoughts on the video game? Have you played the video game for 5-star wrestling?
No, that's the thing. I've seen images of this game. I mean, the problem is like, generally speaking, when it comes to like wrestling video games, so many like little independent games just happen, and they pop up and then they disappear quite a lot. I couldn't find. I mean, I remember listening to the interview and I couldn't find anything. I mean, yeah, his name of the game was Wrestling Manager. Was one of the games he was talking about on the interview. That's right.
Was that? I think he said that was the first game that he ever made, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
And I just couldn't find anything. I mean, granted, if you type in Wrestling Manager or Wrestling Manager video game into Google, you end up with all sorts. You know, you don't really get a huge amount. It's all a mix mash of anything and everything. But if it was. The thing which baffled me about it is if it is such a huge success, and it could very well be, you know, there are video game cultures. Video games is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. If there is like a subculture of video games, which there are, you've got kids, Sax. You know, whenever I come around to your house, your kids are usually playing Minecraft.
I'm so sorry about that, Ruby.
No, it's fine. It's fine. but that's the whole thing. That's an area of video games. I, as a 33-year-old man, have no clue about whatsoever because it's not aimed at me. However, so I could accept that there is this 5-star wrestling video game that exists that has just completely passed me by, but I just couldn't find anything. I could find like little screenshots. And yeah, it looked alright. It was kind of like, like the old football games you used to play, and they didn't get the licenses for the teams, so you had to play as Manchester Red or Manchester Blue instead of City United. I do remember seeing like there were characters like the Rick and Ice Coldy and Austin or things like that. So it was like characters like that. It was like a really bad like EFED from like the early 2000s or something like that. But I mean, the game could be great. You know, I just haven't played on it at all. So yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah. Max, Kieran, have you guys played this game or have you seen anything to do with this game?
When he said that he'd done video games, I had no idea. But it's interesting you saying that he set up his promotion to promote his video game. That has to be the most backward way to start a wrestling company I've ever heard of. It's ridiculous. The only example I can think of any company in the world going from video game to wrestling ring is TNA with was it Suicide? That's probably the worst example I can give, but it's the only one I can think of. But it's just like, that obviously didn't turn out very well. But it's like if you're doing it the other way around, then there's obviously going to be problems. But no, I've some of the things he said about his video games as well. Like he said, I suggested some of the things to WWE and for the THQ games, and some of them made it in. It's like, well, like, don't be trying taking credit for that wasn't you. That was you probably have the same idea as about a million other people. Just that just take me a little. It's like, hang on a minute, that wasn't. They didn't go. Oh, this guy's got some cracking ideas. I mean, if you had some cracking ideas, they'd have probably have actually employed him at THQ.
Well, yeah, absolutely. He is certainly. He comes across as a guy who has got a massive ego. During the interview itself, where he was referring to himself on the same level as WWE or TNA or New Japan, and
I got that.
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, hey, we've all got aim high, right? We've all got aim high in this industry, but after 5 shows in and a failed video game and a failed UK tour, I don't really think he's in a position to be comparing himself with Vince McMahon right now. Max, have you played this game at all? I know you're not really a big gamer, Max, but have you even heard of the 5-star game? I know you've got kids as well.
I was aware of the game, yeah, and I did try to find it, but I couldn't find it anywhere, like Rudy. Yeah, if it was such a success as he was trying to make out, then it should be the first thing popping up on Google, right?
Right, okay.
But I just couldn't find it anywhere.
I think I'm going to set myself a little challenge here. I'm going to see if I can actually find this game for the PS4 or the I'm not even sure if it's out on the Xbox One now. Certainly it's been released for the PS4. So I'm going to try and find it, and if I do find it, I'll try and hook you guys up, and perhaps we can have a bit of a play around with it and have a proper... I feel it's quite unfair to discuss the game because none of us have actually played the game or seen the game or heard all about the game itself, but from what... There's one player, Chris Dutton, who's been a guest on this podcast before. He said that he's played it a couple of times on both platforms, PS3 and PS4, and he's quite impressed by it for the level that it was at. It was no 2K, WWE 2K game or SmackDown versus Raw, whatever they call it these days, but he said for what it was as an independent game, it was actually pretty good. So I'm going to try and get hold of that game, and if I do manage to get hold of it, I'll see if we can try and hook up and have a quick game on to see what we all think on that. Right, guys, moving on from none of you had much understanding or knowledge of 5-star wrestling or Daniel Hinkle's or the video game before the great kick-off that's happened this year. So for most of you, you got to know Daniel just like I did, like most other people listening to this right now got to know him as well, was through my interview with him on the ISAX podcast. I want to get your initial thoughts and feedback on the interview that I did with Daniel earlier on in the week, or actually earlier on in the year, but it was only released a few days ago. Rudy, what was your thoughts on the interview as a whole?
Well, you've raised my initial thought. You actually, I'm going to talk just in general, and then I'm assuming you've got some follow-up questions about certain things that he said. So, but generally, my initial thought was, and particularly towards the end of the interview, was his arrogance. It was quite surprising just how much of an ego he felt that he had, which struck me, because I understand that if you are in any sort of business, really, you do need to have confidence. As a business owner myself, I try and have confidence, and and things work and everything. But on the other hand, it's just like it struck me as being like, well, hang on a minute, you're talking to people and you're almost talking down on them, and you're trying to build yourself up, which, there's probably I'm not a promoter, but it does seem like, rather than saying this 5-star wrestling is going to be the greatest, or a night of really good wrestling, it did strike me as being like, we're the best and nobody else can touch us kind of thing. That's just my opinion, but that's what struck me most of all.
Yeah, I have to agree that his entire attitude came across as very arrogant. I think the pulling the off the record card was an absolute dick move. Just when he had to have known.
Totally agree with that.
He had to have known that you were going to ask about that at some point, and then to pull that card. And I mean, credit to you, Steve, for not spilling the beans at all. Like, because that must be because I guess you must be itching to actually let the world know. But yeah, that's all I've got. That's all I can really say on that. It was just there's more that I've got, but I was as Rudy said, and I guess you've got follow-up questions, so I'll save some
I
stuff
absolutely
for that.
have, and yeah, it's boiling my piss right now that I can't release that off the record segment of the interview. I say segment, like I say, it was over an hour long, and if you thought you had an ego on the interview that you heard, well, wait until you hear it. I think that at some point this is going to be released, because when I put it out there, 99.9% of people were all saying great interview, apart from one person who just happened to be his referee who contacted him. He started getting a bit mouthy in defence of his boss, so I'm not knocking this referee for that. He's defending his boss, who was obviously, he knew too much for it just to be his opinion. He's obviously spoken to Daniel, and Daniel's put his side across. As soon as I mentioned to him, well, if that's the case, if that's how you feel, that I've edited this in a way that makes it sound really bad, just get your boss to get in touch with me, give me the thumbs up, and I'll happily put it out there, and then you can decide yourself if you are still going to side with your boss. And then his referee disappeared, which is fair enough. But again, I'm not knocking the referee, completely understand his loyalty. He doesn't know me. He's probably friendly with Daniel, and he's sticking up for his friend and his boss, so that's fair enough. But anyway, Max, your thoughts on the interview? I know you only listened to it this morning, so your thoughts on it?
I thought, to begin with, he came across quite well and very business-like, and so he should, but as it went on, the arrogance grew, and then after the pause, after the off-the-record segment, I personally thought he got quite hostile towards you, and yeah, okay, you were asking him awkward questions, but he must have known that this interview is going to be listened by thousands of people. So why? I don't understand why he gets so hostile towards you.
He did. He was getting hot. But again, you've not heard the hour-plus long bit that I can't put in there. And there was a lot discussed. There was a lot more in-depth questions and quite sensitive questions that I was putting to him. And whilst I remained as calm as I was throughout the interview that you heard, he was getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So that when that record button was able to be pressed again when we started talking about CM Punk, he was hot. And he was getting quite angry, but he was still insistent on carrying on the interview. He was still answering the questions, so that was off his own back. But yeah, he wasn't in the best mood come the end of the interview.
That might be the case. That he might have been hot, but if he wants to be within this business and he wants to put himself on that platform in front of millions or thousands of fans, then he has to learn to keep his cool. You just can't go out there and act like an absolute dick.
He name dropped one of the fans, Graham Fisher, who I know Graham personally from the Britannia wrestling shows, and I know he's a super British wrestling fan. To kind of slag off whether it be an individual fan or a group of fans, it's just not the way to do it. British wrestling has been on a massive boom for a couple of years now. Everybody that's been involved in it, past and present, have been working really hard to get it to the level that it's at now, where it's globally recognised as, once again, one of the best countries in the world for professional wrestling. And our fans, I say it all the time, and it's not me pandering, but I strongly believe that we have the most passionate, best wrestling fans in the world. But in return for their loyalty and their dedication to what we're doing, they expect a little bit of transparency from promoters and promotions. They expect us to be honest and upfront with them about certain things, and if they ask questions, they expect an answer. And Daniel wasn't doing that. He was kind of like, well, no, this is the way I'm doing it. This is why I've done it. You should have faith in me. It should really, especially when you are starting off. Let's remember, even to this day, he's only 5 shows in. That's not a lot at all. You're not really a wrestling promoter until you've been in this business running shows maybe for a couple of years, and you've got your own fan base behind you. He hasn't got his own fan base. He had groups of the target audience that were going to see the Rey Mysterio on the poster, or they're going to see the John Morrison on the poster. They weren't necessarily going to see the British talent that's on there, because he was treating them as the undercard. Britannia Wrestling, okay, that's my wrestling promotion. For a number of years now, since 2011, I've been using imports, maybe 1 or 2 a year. But I've not used an import now for such a long time, because I don't need to, because we work so hard in building up the British talent that them on the poster alone is enough to draw in the crowds these days. And I don't think he quite grasps that.
Yeah. Agree.
He did have a good idea though. Well, I thought it was a good idea. I think it was a long-winded idea. It was also a little bit risky, but in any business you've got to be willing to take a risk every now and then. The 128-man tournament, was it a good idea or was it a bad idea?
It's a tricky one, because I think it's probably not as bad idea as, in and itself, it's not a bad idea. Case in point, last week, or was it last week or a couple of weeks ago, WCPW finished their I think it was a 64-man tournament. I'm not going to say anymore, but they had their own tournament, and to all intents and purposes, it worked. It had some really good matches, but they've got the money. They have money and they have contacts, and they also didn't try and sell out Manchester Arena. The final was in the Bowlers Centre, which is a fairly small-ish 2,000-seater venue on the outskirts of Manchester. It's in Stratford, so. But yeah, it's not slap bang in the city centre, because they know that they can have a decent crowd in that venue for a final, and it worked really, really well. So the actual notion of a tournament itself is probably not a bad idea, but the way in which they did it, they ran shows in Berlin for the German ones, because it's a lot easier for them to run a show in Berlin for the German qualifiers, where you put 8 German wrestlers there, and one goes through, and you cut down on your expenses because you're not flying 8 people over from Germany. Same with, I think, the US tournament. The US qualifier was in the United States, because they ran a WrestleMania weekend. And they got around the expenses, because the way in which you make money is not only how many people are getting through the door, but also how little you spend in getting those people through the door.
Of course, yeah, 100% right, yeah. And they did it the right way as well. What culture? Okay, they have got the money, which really, really does help when you're setting up any new business, any new venture. But they're doing it the right way, rather than going bang, we've got this massive online presence, bang, we've got these great stars from around the world, as well as TV stars. We've got British stars, German stars, American stars, what have you. They are going around to these slightly smaller venues, still 2,000 people is still a big number, going around to these smaller venues and filling these out and concentrating more on their product, rather than, well, let's try and get this one show rammed with, say, 5,000-6,000 people, and then we'll move on and see where we're going to go. To me, when I see What Culture, it's well presented, it's well formatted, and they seem to have a plan that they're following a natural progression of this plan, and it seems to be working for them.
The thing I also like about What Culture is that they've got, alongside the, obviously they're using some of the biggest names in British wrestling, as well as imports, but they're also, on their undercard, they've actually got homegrown talent as well, and I think that for a company that big to be focusing on stuff like that, and not, they have the money to just stack their cards like time and time again, but they are investing in the smaller, in the future, basically, which is good. The thing that really annoyed me about when Daniel was talking about his tournament was, he said, 128 man,
128
and
man.
it's and the stories that we can tell through that is like, did you see the WWE UK tournament over 2 days, 16 guys? Because that had some good story. That had probably some of the best storytelling that's been on WWE programming for quite a while, and they did that with 16 people. But it's an excessive amount of people I don't really see. Yeah, it's ambitious, and it's different, but there comes a point where difference overkill.
Yeah, absolutely. I may be wrong, but I'm going to say anyway, but I'm pretty sure that What Culture announced their 64-man tournament, and then shortly after, that's when I heard about 5-Star announcing that they were doing the 128-man tournament. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So I remember, recall thinking, what, so they're doing 64, so you're doubling up? Well, I'm going to do a 256-man tournament, fuck it. Yeah. I'm sure that's the case, man. But yeah, you're quite right, Kieran. You're quite right. Where does it become overkill? I said to Daniel that I don't. At the 128-man, on the opening rounds of this 128-man tournament, it's not really a tournament at that point. It's a load of guys and a load of matches, and then as it starts dwindling down through all the many, many different rounds, that's when people will start picking up interest on the actual tournaments, as opposed to the individual matches that will be taking place on the card.
This is when we were talking about What Culture, I think this is where What Culture got it spot on, because they had their qualifiers for the actual tournament, and this is where they went to Germany, they went to America, they went to Canada, Japan as well, I think, and then they had the finals starting from the round of 16, which was the World Cup, and I think that was the perfect way to do it, because that way you're still getting in. If you're going to do such a massive tournament, that is, that you're still getting in amazing matches, you're still showcasing off all this talent, you're still building up the people who you're going to have in your last 16, and then when it comes to the last rounds, that's when you can actually get people excited about it.
I think it's genius, taking them all around the world, doing your qualifiers. I think that's a genius idea. I think it's really, really good. But, and the final 16, was it like WWE UK tournament? Was it over the course of 2 days, the final 16?
I think it was over the course of a week.
Okay.
They went around. I think they did. The round of 16 was on one show, then the quarters and the semis were on another show, and then the final was on a separate show. I think that's right.
Right.
But they did definitely do it over 3 shows.
They also have the benefit of that they're doing it right online, the way that they have their YouTube shows as well. So I know they've had a few problems with YouTube as of late, and they've been kind of screwed financially by them, but they have a huge YouTube presence where I know people personally that always tune into their YouTube shows. So yeah, they're definitely going the right way, What Culture. And yeah, Daniel, rather than jumping the gun and doubling up the amount, the amount of people who's entering into his tournament, should have actually taken a step back, looked at what they were doing, perhaps waited for this tournament to happen with What Culture and gone, okay, now how can I improve on that, rather than just saying, well, I'll double it up. That's better, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Max, the 128-man tournaments. As a referee of British wrestling, Max, what do you feel about it? You've refereed many tournaments for me personally and for other promotions in the UK. What's your thought on this?
It's, from the wrestling business standpoint, it's a logistical nightmare. Steve, I've run shows before. I don't claim to be a promoter, but I have done. Just running one show with a 4-man tournament on it is a ball ache enough. You're talking about 128 guys here that you have to organise and you have to book. I can't see how it would work. If he's got a plan to make it work, and it sounds like he still wants to pursue this idea from what I heard that from the interview, if he's got a plan to make it work, and he does make it work, then, fair dues to him, well done, and I'll put my hands up and say, you know what, I was wrong, he's done it, fair play, and I'll give him a round of applause. But I really, really can't see how that would work.
Well, I mean, another thing you've got to look at with a tournament for 128 man, over the course of time, you're also leaving yourself more open to certain wrestlers involved in the tournament getting injured or double booking themselves, which still happens to this day. And then that's when 128-man tournament's hard to follow as it is. When you've got one guy that's gone through round 1, round 2, and then's injured on round 3, through nothing to do with the storyline, just he got injured, down at Just Do Wrestling, for example, so he can't come back to 5-star, so they have to replace him, and then so you've got a new guy in there that sort of skipped 2 rounds, and it's just too much for the audience to digest. I said, these 4-man knockout, what Max was saying before is, there's an old school method of doing a 4-man tournament on a single show, where you can rock into a new town, a new venue, a new audience, and a great way to introduce the audience to perhaps 4 of your key guys is to have a 4-man knockout parade or knockout tournament, and you bring all 4 guys out to the ring, you give them numbers, you get the audience to pick 2 numbers, those 2 guys stay in the ring, and the other 2 guys go back and they come back out and fight later. The winner of both of those matches go on for the final. Nice little tournament, nice easy way of setting it up, but it can be a bit of a pain in the backside at times. So yeah, logistically, the 128-man tournament, it's for me, it's potentially a good idea if done right, but I would not like to do it myself. But yeah, he has strong intentions on carrying out, based on the interview, on carrying out this tournament at some point. Maybe now that he's got this TV deal with Free Sports UK, maybe that might be a great platform for him to start this. But who knows? We don't know any more details other than Free Sports have announced that they're going to be showcasing 5-star. This is where the shitstorms come from, because a lot of British towns, a lot of British wrestling fans and personalities they're going mad over this. It's like, well, they've had 5 shows. They've cancelled the tour. There's been a lot of controversy around the owner more so than the promotion. Why are these guys getting this opportunity when they've got guys like PCW, Ricky Knight's WAW, Progress, Rev Pro, so many great British wrestling promotions out there at the moment. Why has this been thrown to 5-star? But again, I suppose from a business point of view, this guy has created his own video games that have made it to the PlayStation platforms. He has held 5 somewhat successful shows, and he's got himself a TV deal. So as a businessman, he's obviously quite a good businessman on that side of things. But I just don't think that his business is the wrestling business.
Can I ask you a question, Sax, very, very quickly?
Of course you can.
Just regarding the free sports thing.
Yep.
First of all, do you assume that the deal struck is free sports are going to be giving... I mean, we're speculating here, but do you assume that the money is going from free sports to 5-Star Wrestling?
No.
No, I don't think so too.
I have been offered a TV slot on, I think it's Cardiff TV, which I think they have one on Liverpool as well. It's like a regional TV. Yeah, so it's a regional TV channel. It's on Sky, and a part of that. I mean, it all sounds great. Do you want to put your show on TV? Well, yes, I do. Well, it's going to cost this much, and it's going to cost this much, and basically you have to produce your own wrestling show. You have to hit certain targets, certain levels of quality, and then you send your tape basically over to the network, if you like, and then they will do their own little edit on it, and then they'll put it on the TV. And you hope to make money. I mean, you don't even get the option to make money on the adverts. Yeah, you know, the network are taking your show on so that they can make money on the adverts, not us. You're basically doing it for exposure. I can't believe that a new channel like this, with the amount that I mean, fair play, I heard nothing about free sports until somebody pointed me in the direction of the 5-Star announcements, and then I started doing a little bit of research on them, and they've got a lot to showcase on their new channel. So if they're paying for every single one of those things, that channel's not going to be around for much longer. So no, I do not believe that they are completely funding the 5-Star project to get them on TV. 5-Star may have some form of financial deal with them where they will make a little bit of money off it. I don't know, but I can't see that Daniel Hinkles is getting a big wedge in his pocket at the moment. But again, that's only speculation. That's only my thoughts. I don't know if that's true or not.
It does seem like the most arse backwards deal, because from I did some research on free sports, and they do appear to get like not top. They're not getting like La Liga or Bundesliga or Serie A or anything. They're getting the Belgian Premier League and the Portuguese Premier League on there. I did watch a bit of it for like about 30 seconds, which was like, oh crap! Do you remember? This is more aimed at Sax and Max, but do you remember like they used to be on S4C? Tier Prince Racing.
Yes, the chariot racing.
Yeah. They had something akin to that when I switched it on, and this was like, this was what I would consider to be like 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. This was like prime time. I do wonder if somebody has gone in with free sports and actually gone, you know what, this British wrestling right now is big. It's probably as big as it's been since the World of Sports days. We had the World of Sports special on ITV. We've had the WWE UK tournament. Do you think that I'm beginning to think that free sports needs British wrestling to get eyeballs onto their other stuff? You know how like when you hear like the ECW things, so they used to use like ECW TV as like lead-ins to like roller games or something like that, and they used the wrestling to get more people to watch something a little bit more, let's be honest, advertiser friendly, to get more eyeballs in. Do you think that I would think that probably free sports needs a wrestling show more than a wrestling show needs free sports? That's just my opinion. Maybe that's a little bit of arrogance from it, but you look at like your Progress, your ICWs, and your companies like that, and even like probably even like BWP or Future Shock or something that doesn't have quite as much worldwide exposure. I'm being very diplomatic when I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying to say?
I know exactly what you're trying to say. Yeah.
And I just look at it and go, you know what? I just can't see the benefit of many British wrestling companies going, you know what? I'm going to pay for exposure, because most British wrestling shows now sell out. So what it's either you sell out or you get an on-demand service through through Vimeo or whoever. And I just think, what's the point? Because we're not going to get any bigger. You're not going to get somebody who watches like the Anderlecht versus, I can't think of another Belgian team, but you're not going to get somebody watching that and go, you know what? I've just seen wrestling. I will watch it, because maybe, I don't know this for sure, but maybe PCW pulled out rather than Free Sports.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I again, not knowing anything about Free Sports until this all came about, and I started seeing a few tweets and Facebook statuses about PCW's, apparently PCW jumped the gun a little bit, and kind of had semi-announced that they had got some sort of deal with this TV channel. That's what I take from it. Do you guys know any more about that? So certainly, I think if there was anything out there from PCW, it must have been deleted because I've not seen it when I've been looking for it. But had PCW announced that they got this deal with Free Sports before it was announced that 5 Star are going to be on there?
I remember hearing something about it, but I can't say for certain if it was an official statement released or not. But I do remember hearing that PCW had gotten a TV deal.
Right, okay. I'll do a bit more digging on that, actually. I'll look around and perhaps even speak to Stephen Fludder about that one and see if he's willing to release any sort of information on what. I'm sure that he won't, but I'll certainly ask the questions.
So, going to the TV deal, what I can't understand is why have a fledgling channel, gone to someone like 5 Star, who, okay, yes, do have a bit of money backing behind them, but they don't have the experience. They only have 5 show experience. Why wouldn't they go to someone like WAW, who are there, got experience, they're ready to go, they're already working in a studio, and they're putting out great shows with great production values. I can't understand why they wouldn't go and seek out someone with more, or a promotion I should say, with more experience, because that would certainly help their overall content. I mean, if you, for instance, if you've got a car and you break down, are you going to take it to Joe Bloggs, who's been running a garage for 2 months, or are you going to take it to Quick Fit, who's been running 20 years?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and maybe this does come down to the. There's a few I know Ricky Knight's been through this with WAW, and you just mentioned WAW there, who have an excellent product down in Norwich. Maybe this is a case of 5 Star perhaps did, Free Sports perhaps did contact a number of different promotions, and it sounds like they contacted PCW and there was a bit of communication going on there. But then it all boils down to, as a promoter, I'll quite happily talk to these TV networks, do contact them every now and then, but then you're basically waiting for that line of, and it'll only cost you this much. And for a lot of promotions in Britain, even the ones that are turning a good profit and who are selling out venues and their shows, you don't want to then be pumping what I've been told in the past by TV companies that you're literally talking tens of thousands of pounds just to get your product on TV. A lot of people can't afford that. Those people that can don't want to spend it. Daniel Hinkle himself has said that he's made a lot of money over the years with a number of different businesses, and he's obviously sitting on a bit of a pot of money. So if he's got that money there, and with his, as discussed earlier, with the size of his ego, maybe he doesn't mind splashing the cash a little bit just to get his brand back out there in the public eye. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't a case that they've gone for 5 Star because they think they're the best. Maybe it's a case that 5 Star are the only ones that are willing to cough up.
I'd agree with that.
The other thing as well is that the 5 Star did have a TV show. They had something on Spike. So if you were to look on TV and go, right, what has been wrestling on British TV in the last year? You look at the ITV World Sports Special, which is, as far as I'm aware, was an ITV doing all the production. I saw you, Sax, and I saw you, Max, at the event, and it was in ITV Studios in Media City. So the cost for putting that on probably wasn't huge. because they already had the infrastructure. So the next one down would be 5-star, because they were on Spike TV. So maybe that's the line of their thinking behind it. But just finally on this point is, it's, as you said, it's very expensive to put on a TV show. I mean, I don't know, I've never done it, but you look at like what WWE are doing. There must be a reason that they're pushing the WWE network and using TV time to push that. It must be something that they're looking towards the future, and this is WWE. Is TV? I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I hardly watch TV much now. Actually, usually on demand services, but that may be just me. But
yeah, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same for me. I watch zero TV. I don't even have a TV license. Legally, don't have a TV license. I will throw that out there because all I do is stream. I stream on Netflix and on the WWE network. That is it. So I've saved myself a shitload of money, and I watch specifically what I want to watch when I want to watch it. And I understand what you're saying there, Rudy. WWE are obviously venturing towards the point where sometime in the future you may not be able to get WWE on TV. It may be within the WWE network, which I think is a fantastic idea. When WWE first started the network, and you were saying, well, it's $9.99 a month, and you get all the pay-per-views and with that, as well as the back catalogue, I was thinking, how are they making money off this? They've gone from me paying, did it used to be on Sky, or still is it, about 20 quid a pay-per-view? Is that right? About 18, 19 quid a pay-per-view?
Yeah, it's about that now.
How are they automatically, they're halving that? That's just for the pay-per-view. I just don't understand how they can actually make money off that. But then, was it only about 2 or 3 months ago, they announced that they now hit 1 million subscribers to the WWE network. So it's obviously working. They're obviously happy with it because they're still massively pushing that route that they've taken. So they obviously are making money from this. Personally, I just can't see how they're making money from it, but they obviously are.
How many times did you pay for a pay-per-view?
In my more adult years, I would pay certainly for the Rumble, certainly for WrestleMania, possibly for SummerSlam. That's it.
Okay, so if it's 20 quid a month, that's what, 20 quid a month, or 20 quid per pay-per-view, that's 60 quid.
It's between 40 and 60 quid a year that I'd spend on the pay-per-view.
And now they're getting 120 quid out of you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So there you go.
And they obviously would be pocketing more of that £10 a month or $9.99 a month than they possibly could have done from the pay. Because obviously, when the pay-per-views were shown on pay-per-view, the pay-per-view company would take their chunk and then give the WWE the agreed percentage or whatever. So maybe they are making more money per pay-per-view on this. But it's quite interesting. It's been interesting from start to finish at WWE to see how it's grown and developed now. It's still growing and developing now, even though it's hit that massive milestone of 1 million subscribers.
I don't think you'll see them vanish from TV completely, though, because they need something beyond their own network to encourage new fans and new eyeballs.
You see, I don't know if I agree with that, because even if people, because when it's shown, especially now that SmackDown's live as well, the times that it's shown, for the British fans now, more so than anybody else that I'm talking, if you watch it on Sky Sports, you tend to record it anyway, and then the next morning or the next day after work or whatever you're in, you'll come back and you'll watch it on the catch-up, once you've recorded it. So you're actually not watching it live anyway. So what's the difference? I would rather pay... As a non-TV watcher, and not just me, that's my partner and my children as well, we've just grown over the last 3 to 4 years into this non-TV family. The kids like YouTube and Netflix. I like Netflix and the WWE network. I just can't see that there's much difference. I'd rather pay £10 a month to get the WWE network and know that I can watch all these pay-per-views. Okay, Raw and SmackDown is slightly different because it's like a 30-day wait for each episode. I'd rather pay that rather than £30-40 a month to Sky, just to be able to watch the wrestling, because there was many years that I had Sky TV just for access to the WWE programming, strictly for that and very little else. Whereas now it's perfect. I know what I'm paying. I pay it every month, and I know I can watch what I want, when I want, how I want, and it just seems easy. So I think a natural progression over time. It's not going to be a quick thing. I think we will see WWE come off TV. although maybe their main show's coming off TV, there might still be, I don't know what their weekly things are now. Is it, I don't know, Heaters or something like that? You know, their catch-up TV.
Yeah.
There may be a few programs on Sky One or something like that, but inevitably, I think it's going to aim towards the network. Everything's towards the network these days.
You could bring Raw and you could bring SmackDown into the network folder, but you'd need to leave like a weekly catch-up TV program up to the public, just to get new eyeballs and new followers and new fans. You could certainly bring Raw and SmackDown into the network folder by all means.
Yeah. Which, very, very quickly, that's ironically how it used to be. Because when it was in the early or in the late 80s, it was slightly different. But, you know, you never got Hulk Hogan on the weekly shows every single week. You got him once a month. You'd be treated to, you know, Coco Beware versus, you know, some random guy, you know, some enhancement talent, or you get, you know, whoever, you get Mr. Perfect or something. But to see the top guys, you'd either have to get the pay-per-view or you'd have to go to the arena. So it's going back to how it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I quite like that, to be honest with you. They've been doing it with Brock Lesnar for some time now. Okay, last couple of weeks he's been on TV because he's got this new program building with Braun Strowman, but they saved Brock Lesnar, and the fact he's the champion as well, they are saving the biggest player in the game at the moment, who's got one of the biggest titles in WWE at the moment, and they save him they're building their undercard, and when it's time, they'll bring them a special treat for the fans. They'll bring Brock Lesnar in, he'll do something huge, and then he'll disappear again for a few weeks, and then they'll bring him back. And the timing's pretty spot on usually with Brock Lesnar. So I do like the fact that it's going back to old school ways a little bit.
We digress.
As always on this podcast, as always. Right, so one of the biggest topic that we were able to discuss, Daniel and I, was CM Punk. Now, obviously, Daniel went onto the Fighting Talk section of the Daily Star newspaper, which is like a weekly column. I think still presented by Patrick Lemon, and he offered CM Punk $1 million to come out of wrestling retirement and to go and work for 5 Star Wrestling during their scheduled and later cancelled 2017 UK tour. As soon as I saw this, as always, jumped online, jumped on Twitter, saw all the comments, and I can honestly say there wasn't a single positive comment about this. Not a single person that I saw or spoke with thought that A, it was a legitimate offer, or B, that CM Punk would ever take it. Obviously he didn't, because, well, first of all, there's no tour for him to come out of retirement too, but he didn't respond in any way to Daniel Hinkle's, which Daniel confirmed, but 5 Star got a lot of exposure because of this. Controversy creates cash, as somebody famous once said. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? Did he go about it the right way? Obviously during the podcast with me, he said that he found it really hard to get hold of CM Punk. And by the way, you know, just so you know, Steve, wrestlers don't like passing on offers to other wrestlers. And my case with him was, well, if you're paying Johnny Morrison $4,000, and you're saying, but when you go back to America, can you have a quick word with Phil and see if he'll accept $1 million offer, please, Johnny? Here's your $4,000 though. Thanks for working for me. Of course, people are not going to like that, and he's ruffled a few feathers backstage and with the fans because of this offer to CM Punk, so it has backfired him a little bit, but ultimately, people became aware of 5 Star Wrestling because of this ridiculous offer. But what do you guys think? Was this a good move by Daniel, or was it a bad move?
I don't think it was the worst move he's ever done. In the grand scheme of things, he got a lot of publicity out of it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that was, in the grand scheme of things, it's not the worst thing he's ever done. But yeah, he got publicity out of it. People do silly things for publicity. I think you know, you hear stories about people taking, you know, money. You know, I mean, it happens. It's not the first person to offer a silly sum of money to a wrestler, or even just a personality. I think there was a federation about a few years ago who got Lembit Opik, who was a MP for the Liberal Democrat.
I remember that. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Very, very quickly, that I think he did accept money for it, because you have to declare, if you're an MP, what money you've taken, and I'm pretty sure that he probably got more than the people who were probably working, like the wrestlers on that card. So I'm assuming it does happen, and I just don't think, there are people who are paid more than others. That's just a fact of living in the capitalist society. And yeah, particularly if you're like, a limited company, for example, you have to declare how much, your, lack of a better word, top people are on. So I don't think this is a bad thing. Yeah, it's a bit of a silly bugger offer, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I did have a few qualms with a few of the things he did say about the offer on your podcast, which, yeah.
What are those qualms, really?
Okay.
This is your platform to get us all out there. What are your qualms?
Okay. Yeah, my qualms was from your interview with him. He was again. This is probably connects to his arrogance as well. He was saying he'd get CM Punk, and he said something along the lines of he would sell out based on CM Punk alone. Now, I mean, if he can, fair play to him. But put it this way, I can't remember where I was. I was either in Liverpool or Manchester, but I saw CM Punk wrestle with Daniel Bryan against the Shield for WWE, and that didn't sell out. I've seen The Undertaker in Manchester recently, and that didn't sell out. So WWE obviously has a massive marketing machine behind it and everything, and those didn't sell out. So I don't think he thinks he can sell out the same arena with a $1 million talent.
Mate, I understand what you're saying. I kind of do completely agree with you, but maybe it would be the attraction that CM Punk, who's retired from wrestling and made a big noise about it, if he took that offer, maybe more people, especially if he took the offer and said, okay, I'll take £1 million, Mr. Hinkle, and I will come and do one match for your $1 million, and it'll be my coming out of a retirement match, and then I'm going straight back in retirement because I've got UFC to think about. Maybe if it was put on that basis and Punk went public with it as well, maybe there'd be a bit more interest than when Punk was contracted to WWE and you could see him every week in a different state, town or country. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe the appeal will be there. But again, $1 million or £1 million, whatever the offer was, is a lot of money. And to invest that into one person, when you've got a whole string of shows and a whole string of talent and marketing and promotion to do, that's a lot. But that's a big ask for anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he would have perhaps done better than maybe the standard Liverpool show that WWE put on the basis that he was coming out of retirement for a one-off match, if that was going to be the case. But I don't think he would have clawed back anywhere near that $1 million or £1 million.
Of course not. And this is the other thing which I had a problem with is, looking at the Manchester, I'm taking the Manchester Arena because I'm familiar with it. It's probably like I just couldn't see how he could realistically make money at the level he was doing. Now, I mean, put it this way: I attended the last TNA show that was in Manchester, and I'd guess there was about 3,000 people, 4,000 people there at the absolute most, and Manchester Arena holds 18 to 19,000 for wrestling. So it does seem like, I mean, I've been in Manchester Arena where, I nearly said the wrong sort of phrase there, but I've been in Manchester Arena during very, very poorly sold shows, and it does seem like you probably need less tickets, less sales than you think to make a profit. However, if you are like flying if you were to run like a better word, a British show in a big arena, ICW ran the Hydro, right? last November, I think it was, for their biggest show ever. And, you know, they ran with primarily British talent, with a few imports here and there. And they probably made money because they're doing it again. Because, you know, it's a lot, I don't want to say cheaper, that's probably the wrong sort of phrase, but you're not flying over 10 guys from America, first class on an airplane. You know, you're loading probably 4 or 5 people in a car from Glasgow. You know, which just makes it a lot easier to your costs are a lot lower, and it does seem really, really bad. I think I've rambled a little bit.
That's fine. I do it all the time on the podcast.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Kieran, what are your thoughts on the whole CM Punk thing?
I think it, like Rudy said, I think it's a massive publicity thing. Obviously, listening to the podcast, he was very determined to get the deal done, and fair play. But I think he's underestimating how shallow CM Punk actually is. If you've listened to any podcast or anything that CM Punk's ever done, you'll know that what he says is what he means, and I don't think he'd work for anybody unless he was getting the right exposure, and by that I mean he would either be New Japan or Ring of Honor. There's no way he'd go to a wrestling company who's run 5 shows in the UK, who aren't even regarded as one of the best promotions in the UK, and are far from it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. As Mike Holland and I said at the end of the interview the other day, there's only 2 firms, or maybe 3 firms that Punk would go to if he were to make his return to wrestling. One, which is highly unlikely, but WWE, because of the exposure, because of the money, because that's the biggest wrestling company in the world, but more likely to be a combination of New Japan and Ring of Honor, because the Ring of Honor have always started, and New Japan because of the exposure they're getting and the level of quality wrestling, actual wrestling that they're putting on, and have done now for a number of years, and that would be a massive, middle finger to Triple H and to Vince and to WWE to do that. But certainly, yeah, you're absolutely right. Why would he go to, if he's going to come to Britain, at any place in the world, if you're going to come to Britain, he would look towards working somewhere like ICW or Progress or even like UF Pro or what have you. I don't think he'd work, he certainly wouldn't come work for me at BWP, I certainly couldn't afford him. He wouldn't go to work for the likes of PCW, which is a bit of a novelty, nostalgia act sometimes when it comes to the imports. He'd go for one of the bigger ones, so, and 5-star, as you said, quite rightly Kieran, not anywhere near the top of that list. I don't think they'd even make the top 10, not maybe even the top 20, if I'm being perfectly honest. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Max, CM Punk, I know you're a big CM Punk fan. What did you take on this? Did you see the initial Daily Star advert?
I did. I read it, and my first opinion, and it still is my opinion, is it is one big publicity stunt. CM Punk will not come back to the WWE because he's fallen out big time with Vince and Trips. He's certainly not going to come back for £1 million or $1 million to a show that's run by, to a promotion that's run 5 shows in the UK. Because, like we were saying, he won't get the exposure. And it seems to me, and I'm sure Mike DJ King said this at the back end of your previous podcast, he seems to have fallen out of love with wrestling. And I don't blame him for the way he was treated at WWE. Anyone would fall out of love with wrestling. And Daniel Hinkle, as a businessman, he would have known this. And in my opinion, it was just one great big publicity stunt. It was a work to get people to look at him and to look at his promotion. And then, we go back to talking about how egotistical he is. Because he wanted everyone to look at him, everyone to look at his promotion, and then when things went tits up, it was like, yeah, look away. Nothing to see here, move on.
I think what he did was, would I do it? Personally as a promoter, would I do it? No, I wouldn't. Do I like what he did? I kind of did. I must admit, I did. He made a lot of noise. Suddenly, as soon as that newspaper hit the stands on Friday morning, people who go out there specifically on a Friday to buy the Daily Star for the Fighting Talk section, because the Brits get a lot of coverage in there. He and 5 Star Wrestling became more of a household name, if you like, so to speak. People were aware of him when previously, before purchasing that newspaper, they weren't. So, job done, right? But as I said to him, that is pretty much like saying, it's like me going out and saying, okay, I've got a show in Liverpool, I've tweeted John Cena, and I've asked him, or I've offered him $1 million to come and work for BWP at Liverpool in January. And I'm going to push that and push that and push that online, and people will, until people start thinking, well, John Cena might turn up in Liverpool in January for BWP. And I know, first of all, I haven't got $1 million to give him, which I think is the case of Daniel as well. I know he's not going to turn up even if I did. But because I've tweeted him publicly, that's okay then, right? I can kind of advertise him because I've tweeted him. And for me, that's like sticking any... you hear it quite often, not so much these days, but, you know, you used to hear it all the time back when I was wrestling, for when they used to do, like, the tribute shows, and they would advertise certain people on the poster. They'd use the same standard poster all year round, maybe, you know, sometimes years on end, and you'd have certain wrestlers on there that haven't wrestled for that promotion for donkey's years, but they used the same poster, so they're going to be on there. And punters do, you know, the wrestling fans do complain about that. Well, why is he on the poster? I was expecting to see Dylan Roberts, or I was expecting to see James Drake, because they're on the poster, but they're not actually on the show. So morally, it's a question of, did he go about it the right way? No, he didn't, absolutely. Did a lot of people feel that he was trying to advertise CM Punk to be on the show when he knew that CM Punk was never going to be on that show? And I think that, again, is absolutely, that was what he was trying to do. And you can't do that. You can't do that in wrestling in general, particularly in British wrestling, where, as I said before, the fans are so passionate about our product. And it is our product. You know, each of the individual wrestling firms, I own BWP, Dan Evans owns Just Do Wrestling, Kieran McConnell owns Infinite Promotions, but effectively, it's our product. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you know what? It'd have been interesting to know what Patrick Lennon's thoughts would have been about this when he initially put it into the article.
Well, I suppose for Patrick Lennon, you know, it's the same sort of thing. He knew he'd get more eyes on his column within the newspaper, and then people logging onto his column online on the Daily Star website. But he wasn't in that awkward position, I suppose, where he wasn't the one offering $1 million. He'd quite happily advertise it and promote it and push it, because it's not him who's going to get the shit for it, but he'll still get all eyes on his webpage. So I can't imagine that he'd be that concerned about it at all.
No, he won't be. Not from a business standpoint for him, for getting people to read the Daily Star. Then, yeah, it's great for him. But I would want to know what his personal views would have been about it. So maybe, you know, you can get him on a future episode of Isaac's Wrestling Podcast.
I must admit, I have reached out to Patrick Lennon in the past, and nothing regarding this, just in general. So I'll put that on my to-do list. I will shoot him an email and see if he's got any thought, or if he's willing to give any thoughts about this topic about 5 Star and CM Punk. So yeah, good shout, Max. I'll get onto that ready for the next episode. The last question I want to put to all of you. No, I think it's fair to say that you guys have come on today, and you haven't really come on purposely to bury 5 Star or Daniel Hinkle. You've given your feedback based on the interview that I had with him. So, do you think, given that everything that's gone on with the CM Punk thing, with the cancellation of the tour, with the news of Free Sports UK showcasing 5 Star shows, do you think 5 Star Wrestling can pull themselves out of the hole that they've basically put themselves in? Do you think they can salvage something from this and become known as one of the top tier promotions in Britain?
I don't think so. I maybe. It depends, because I don't think so. Would I ever watch him? Probably not. Let's leave it like that. I live in Manchester. There are alleged rumours as to why shows were cancelled, or why the tour was cancelled. It was in the previous podcast. For me, that was a point where I just went, no, I don't want anything to do with this company.
Even if they rocked up back into, let's say they come back to your hometown in Manchester, yeah, and they are going to be filmed for TV, which is it's usually a bit of a draw that for the wrestling fans that they might get to see themselves on TV. They've got an awesome roster. They've got let's say they've got like a shit ton of big import names, if you like, as well as a huge British roster of guys that you want to see as well. Even if that was the case, you still wouldn't go to see them, no?
I probably wouldn't.
And that's on the basis of the alleged reasons why he cancelled, particularly the Manchester show, as well as the entire tour.
Yeah, I mean, that was a straw that broke the camel's back, to be honest, and quite strongly broke the camel's back. But I just wouldn't be necessarily interested. I don't think as a fan of certain wrestling, I don't think the shows would be aimed at me. I don't think that it's really aimed at smart fans. I just think it's a little bit. I wouldn't be necessarily a fan of them, to be honest. Because a lot of the things that we talked about, the fact you've got to be honest with your audience, and the fact is that there's only so many hours in the day as well on top of it. But I'd rather support a company that respects me as a fan, and I know that's maybe a little bit arrogant of me, but at the end of the day, I'm paying the ticket. So
absolutely, and you've got that much choice out there now.
Yeah,
you can have that little bit of arrogance that you have to compete. Like you said, there's only so many hours in the day, there's only so many days in the week, and every weekend, and more so these days as well during midweek shows are happening more and more. You do have the choice I can go see Progress here, or I can go see BWP here, or Future Shock here. Well, I'm not going to go see them all, so what I'll do is I'll have a look what offers the most of what I want to see personally.
Yeah.
So you can afford to have that little bit of arrogance as a fan in Britain now, which I think that's a good thing.
I think that's a really good thing. And the other thing to kind of, which will probably lead on to probably why I don't think they'll succeed, is because if I go, the other reason which I go is I get to meet people who, I like, because you sit in a certain spot on a show, particularly in somewhere like Manchester where they have companies. I mean, Lucha Forever pretty much runs the Frog and Bucket every single week in Manchester because they can, and their shows sell out. If I was to go to something like that, and I would be standing in the same place, I'd be standing probably around the same people. It's like the old ECW had the hat guy on the front row and the guy in the Hawaiian shirt on the front row, and they were there every single show. And it's pretty much almost the same certainly for the Progress shows that I go to. And so the other reason why I would go is because I'd see a few people, I'd have a wee natter, and I would share a drink, and I'd invite people to those shows myself and go, you like wrestling? Come meet a bunch of my friends, and we can talk about it for an hour and watch some really, really good wrestling, or 2 hours and watch some really, really good wrestling. In fact, you probably see the exact same people sitting in the same spots on every single BWP show, and yeah, that's going to be what will make or break 5-star. It's not necessarily the talent who are going to be on it, because let's be honest, if they're picking like an El Ligero or a Bubblegum or a Joe Coffey, as they were talking about on the show, you can go to like 5 or 6 shows, almost like for El Ligero's case a week, and see El Ligero perform. But there's a reason why companies such as Progress and Rev Pro and ICW sell out, and that's because of how they present those people, and also the atmosphere they build at those shows. It's almost like a brand, and to be honest, the 5-star brand right now amongst your fan base is in the toilet.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic.
Yeah. Kieran, do you think that 5-star can pull themselves out of this hole they've dug themselves into?
I'd be surprised, to be honest. There was something that really kind of struck me. Like at the past year at uni, I'm just going to drop this. At the past year at uni, I did a dissertation on the growth in popularity of British wrestling in the 21st century. Had a lot of interviews from people from all eras, from the World of Sport days, from people who are wrestling it right now. fans, backstage personnel. I'm pretty sure Max filled out my questionnaire. Actually,
I did.
And so like not only being involved in British wrestling anyway, but that also gave me more sense of pride looking at it from that way, looking at where we've been, where what we went through in the 90s and where we are now. And also one line he said, what did he say? He said it was the first nationally broadcast wrestling show in the UK. I'm like, have you heard of World of Sport? Like, how ignorant do you have to be to not acknowledge the lineage, the entire reason that British wrestling is as big as it is today? That upset me a little bit, but
yeah, well, I mean, World of Sport was only a tiny little thing, though, wasn't it? In fairness, it was only 18 million views a week for something like 10 or 15 years. Who remembers that? Who remembers that?
Yeah, that was my one biggest thing. But yeah, when you look at companies like ICW, like Progress, and the success that they're getting now, Progress's tagline, like that they've used quite a lot over the past year, is started from the bottom, now we're here. And I think that is like, I think every company in the UK can use that tagline, because apart from 5-star, because I think that's the part of the pride that British wrestling has, is that you start small, you earn your numbers, you earn your reputation, and you get to where you deserve to be. You don't come in with, your X amount of American imports. You're not supporting the scene that you're supposedly representing, and expect or demand respect.
Absolutely.
It's just wrong.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter how big British wrestling gets or becomes. It doesn't matter how much it changes. One thing always stays the same and always will. To be involved in this business and to be taken seriously and to be respected, you've still got to pay your dues. And it doesn't matter if you're a wrestler in the ring, it doesn't matter if you're the guy pulling the curtain backstage, or it doesn't matter if you're the promoter. You are expected to pay your dues, and that's just something that Daniel hasn't done. Okay, he went and he tried to do a little bit of training last once or twice. That didn't work out for him. That's fair enough. It doesn't work out for everybody. But then he jumped straight from trying to be a wrestling trainee to trying to be a wrestling promoter, and he missed out that entire important section in the middle of paying his dues to this business. And finally, Max, what do you think? Can 5-star pull themselves out of this hole? Can they make something of themselves now?
Do I think the 5-star ship can be righted? Yes, I do. Do I think that Daniel Hinkles should captain that ship? No, fuck no. We've seen it before, we've seen it in the past, okay? Case in point, WCW. Ted Turner, businessman, buys WCW. He puts non-wrestling businessmen in to run WCW. And it was a clusterfuck. It was an absolute clusterfuck. And the only time WCW actually came up and started to be able to compete against WWE is when Eric Bischoff was put in charge. Eric Bischoff has wrestling background. That's why that worked. Daniel Hinkles doesn't have a wrestling background. Okay, yeah, he's done 1 or 2 training sessions. That's not a background. He's just a businessman who is trying to play promoter. And it just won't work with him there. It needs to be a wrestling person at the helm. Someone who understands the nature of the business. And without that, that ship is going to sink, and it's going to sink, and it's going to sink, and 5-star will be no more.
Okay. That's fair enough. Yeah, that's fair enough. As a brand, maybe it has got potential, or maybe before this big shitstorm that's blowing over there at the moment, maybe before then they had a bit more potential, maybe on paper. But I completely agree with that. Daniel Hinkle's at the helm. Daniel Hinkles can finance 5-star wrestling and stay at the back and have nothing to do with the running of it, and then they may have more success moving forward. But I completely agree with that. Whilst he's playing promoter, because that's all he is doing, he's playing promoter, I can't see that they're ever going to get themselves out of this hole.
No, not at all.
Right, guys, well, that is it. I really want to thank all three of you. This has been great. It's been great to hear your own personal opinions, your personal feedback. thanks for taking the time out, first of all, to listen to the interview, and then taking the past nearly hour and a half to come and talk to me on the podcast. I'll get this out in the next couple of days. I will follow up on a few of those things. I will try and speak to Patrick Lemon about his take on the CM Punk offer in the newspaper, and I will also try and get hold of this video, the 5-Star Wrestling video game for the PS3, PS4, and if I do get a copy, I'll try and hook you guys up as well, so perhaps we can do this again in a few weeks' time, and by then hopefully we'll know a little bit more from Free Sports UK about their intentions, what they're going to be doing with 5-Star, and then hopefully in that time as well we may actually get some sort of public news from 5-Star about their intentions moving forward as well. But yeah, thank you all very, very much. But one very quick last thing, Rudy, just for you. What odds would WrestlingBetting.co.uk give on 5-Star Wrestling making a success?
Thank you very much. So yeah, if you go to wrestlingbetting.co.uk/ISACs, you can sign up for free. ABC, always be closing. I don't know. Let's go with 250 to 1.
Wow.
And if they become a success, no, I'll tell you what, I'll half those odds. 128 to 1.
128 to 1, nice. I like what you did there. I like what you did there, Rudy.
There we go. I thought of that. Still got the brain for it. 5 years out, still got the brain.
Right, cheers, guys. Thank you all very, very much for staying. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Cheers, Steve.
Cheers.
Into professional wrestling? Of course you are. You're listening to the iSax Wrestling Podcast. Why not turn your passion into profit at wrestling betting? Body slam the bookmakers with the longest running WWE betting tips and prediction site. We cover all bookmakers before each WWE pay-per-view to get the best odds and accumulators, so you don't have to. Sign up for free at wrestlingbetting.co.uk/iSax to get the latest predictions delivered straight to your inbox. That's wrestlingbetting.co.uk/iSax. Check us out today. You have been listening to the iSax Wrestling Podcast. Follow Steve Saxon on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at iSax Podcast. And remember to subscribe and 5-star rate this podcast on iTunes. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Saxon has left the building.